So how many of you remember the events of 9/11 and where you were? So I'm seeing like quite a majority of you. I can't see everybody, but yeah. Well, for me, when 9/11 happened, I can't remember where I was because I was 1 year old. And for me, 9/11 was history. And what I've just introduced to you is I've introduced you to the generational barrier that happened to the generation after millennials. So I call them Generation Z, but they have lots of other names like iGen and Generation Sensible. And this generation is really sort of the new generation. So for lots of you will be sort of your children or maybe your children's children. And we felt the effects, and we've only lived in the world after the sort of war and terror started. And also, for most of us, we either weren't alive for 9/11, or we weren't even alive for the recession in 2008 either. So we've lived in a world that's been sort of fearful on terror and also on economic instability. But for those of you around the room that aren't Generation Z, I want you to all think about somebody that you know that is Generation Z. So it could be somebody that you teach, maybe your children, or somebody just you know or you've seen in the street, and what you think about them. Probably for most of you, your mind's going to lazy, doesn't really do much, unmotivated, because that's lots of the common misconceptions around Generation Z, because we're really misunderstood. What most studies have shown is that we have the shortest attention span of any generation in human history, sort of as short as 8 seconds. So really, any Gen Zers out there, I hope I still have your attention. And we've also really started to shift. And the main reason for our shift is because we are the first generation to ever grow up with this thing that you guys might have heard of called the internet. The internet has fundamentally changed not just how we interact, but also how our brains actually function. So now, not only is our attention span shorter, but how we learn, how we get motivated, and how we engage with the world as a whole is completely different. One of the most exciting things, though, that I find about our generation is just how diverse we are. A recent study has come out that said that by next year, 50% of Gen Z Americans will be white. And that's down from 70 or 80%. And so we're starting to really see a shift into sort of a more diverse and global sort of standpoint. And moving into the workplace, we're really going to start to see shifts. So I don't know how many of you already work with people that are coming out of school and stuff like that. But in the next 20 years, Generation Z will next year, it's going to make up about 1/3 of the world's population. So in the next 20 years, there'll be over 2.5 billion new people joining the workspace that have completely different brains to what generations have had before. We're kind of the generation that kind of has shaken everything up. The last generation to mainly do that was, and we might have some in the room, baby boomers, who were born shortly after the Second World War. And we saw a real sort of change in how humans interacted with each other after the Second World War, and we're seeing that again. And it's really exciting for me because as somebody who's an entrepreneur and who started a company quite young, I get to go around and meet loads of young people that are starting their own companies and starting their own businesses. Some, and I mean really some are like 7 or 8 and they're already getting their foot up there and doing new and interesting things and coming up with it. And it's just amazing. A poll and a study's recently come out that says 45% of Gen Z want to start their own business, which I think is something that I'm really excited about. And I'm really excited to see how the world's going to change. If there's one thing that I really want you guys to all take away from today, it's that Generation Z is coming. And we're coming quite quickly. Now you're really going to start to see, we're just starting to join the workforce now. I've just turned 18 and I'm kind of at the upper end of Gen Z, but we're really going to start to see them. And I think the best thing for you guys to do, if you're wondering what can I do to really engage, is just to listen and learn and achieve. from what they're saying and what they want. Because what you might find is that they might teach you a thing or two, not just about technology, but how to do your job or something in the future very, very different. Thank you for listening.